I remember when I interviewed Proctor years ago on the podcast, he said, you'll never go wrong if when you're tapped into that feeling. He's like, don't ever doubt that. When you sense that feeling, you'll never go wrong. And that's what you're saying. It's all bets are off. You go with your heart. And that's really what's guided me through the years, like, what position am I going to take? Is it this one? Is it that one? Go with the heart. And I feel it.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood Taoist Master San Qing, and it's another amazing day in paradise. It's good to be me, and I'm very grateful to welcome to the podcast Andrea Samadi, who is a conscious searcher, creator, coupling neuroscience with science, the idea of using this language to get us a deeper understanding of the consciousness that we speak of in the world today. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting to be on your show, son. I've been following it for a while and learning so much, especially your most recent ones with Tom Campbell and his knowledge. That's where I've been looking, trying to get the science to understand this spiritual world here.
Yeah, it is. It's so interesting how there's a million different ways up the mountain. So I would love you to just share with the audience just a little bit about yourself leading up to this point.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I'll do the short version because we could go on. It's been a journey to get to where we are today, but it started for me in the late 90s. I was a school teacher in Toronto, and my next door neighbor was driving in back and forth in different sports cars. And now, if you know me, I'm not drawn to the materialistic type things. It wasn't this fact that he had different sports cars. I just wondered what he did for a living to be able to afford these sports cars. I was like, what are you doing? Like, when my teacher salary is not going to get me a new sports car every week. So I was just curious. And I said, hey, what do you do for a living? And he didn't answer me. He gave me a book. He said, read this book and then, come back and tell me if you have any questions. And it was Bob Proctor's You Were Born Rich book. And I read this book in a staff meeting when I was a teacher. I was at the Toronto District School Board, and I'm supposed to be listening to what's going on in the schools. And I'm reading this book all about how we have unlimited potential within ourselves. And all about levels of vibration. And I was drawn in. This was my first introduction to the spiritual world. I ended up quitting and breaking my contract with the school board and going to work for Bob Proctor for 6 years. So that's really where it started. I learned so much from him in the industry, in the speaking industry. And then he was challenged to work with teenagers, and do you know who he is? Do you know this speaker that I'm talking about?
Well, the second you mentioned him, he immediately came into the field of this conversation and was going on with a bunch of different things. Now, that's a whole nother channel for me. That's what I do. But yeah, he's very present and I am familiar with him. And I've always loved the nurturing, strangely, people may say this, but if they get to know him, a maternal sort of like nurturing that he gives people, which is a grounding and understanding.
That's so interesting because here's where he was challenged to work with these 12 teenagers he was used to speaking to adults and globally. He's well known globally and helping people, make the shift with their conscious awareness to earn more money, really, so a financial guy. And then he was challenged, hey, why don't you try and take this to 12 kids? And I, as a former teacher, was sitting there going, oh, good luck. Let's just see you do this. Because in my classroom, the students were throwing chalk brushes around. And I'm thinking, this is going to be fun. So I sat back and what he did in 12 weeks blew me away, Sam. Like, he had these kids going from C grades to A grades. The sports kids were bench warmers to starting lineups. Like, these kids in 12 weeks changed their lives around, academically, personally, and it hit me in my stomach. It was like a brick got thrown at me when I saw it. I thought, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to take this stuff and disseminate it somehow so that kids could get it. And then that's really what brought me to take Bob's work and write The Secret for Teens Revealed. I wrote that book just as the movie The Secret was coming out. I was, thinking, well, what could I call this? It was going to be called some really long title that didn't make sense until I saw Rhonda Byrne's The Secret come out. And so I leveraged off of it and called it The Secret for Teens before the author wrote The Secret for Teen Power. So this is going back some years. And then I started working with these concepts with kids, with Bob. And when I was in Toronto, I would write the lessons, and there was other writers, but I would help with the lessons with the teens that were eventually put on cassette tapes that went globally, just to try to help kids to understand these things. So the program went from 12 kids to 500 to international. And here I was in Toronto going, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? So I quit my job teaching, and I went to work for Bob for $10 an hour back then, doing data entry to the seminars. Sorry, I'm getting out of breath. Just so that I could be around the content, right? It was like that important for me. And I remember my mom at the time knew Bob's work, so she was supportive and said, go do what you need to do. But my dad didn't understand it, didn't come from the spiritual background. And I remember him yelling at me saying, you'll regret the day that you do this. You're giving up benefits. Do you know what that means? And I didn't understand what that meant until I had moved to Arizona, from Toronto, where we have this great healthcare system, to Arizona. And I had my first child. And then I understood. I remember my dad going, you'll regret giving up those benefits. And I understood, but it wasn't worth it for me to have stayed for benefits. And the benefits I got from understanding this material in my late 20s and starting on this pathway far outweighed any financial gain that I've seen.
Wow, what a massive entry into conscious seeking. And really, you look at some of the things that Bob was constructing and as you put it, disseminating to the world in relation to manifestation, what it takes to create those building blocks. It's mind-boggling, but it can, you start to, because there's such a culmination of all the things that are happening in the world today, and you can get it instantly on the web. You can have a deeper understanding of this sort of like expression or seeking, as we put it within Taoism, a Taoist seeker, and you get these fundamentals. You go, wow, okay, so Bob Proctor has his viewpoint of manifestation, and he has this infrastructure and how to obtain it. And there's building blocks that are identified through the experience that can start with this emotional state that gives you the ability to access the resonance. And that resonance is what, is basically a gateway to your manifestation, your realization of whatever it is that you want in your life. But there's fundamentals, and I really appreciate the way that, from the few things that I've seen of his, he has a very caring sort of way of approaching it and helping you understand it, merging the conscious and unconscious. Where people didn't really at that time have a deeper knowing of what it meant when you shifted your brain waves and what that could do for your potential in this reality. And so when you use this stuff, And now you're here today, and you're at a certain point, using science in your discovery to help people understand this deeper nature of reality. How do you apply it more? What are you doing today in 2024? Because I think, when did he pass away? A couple of years ago, I think.
Yep,
I'm not
a
sure.
couple years ago, I was
Yeah.
I was doing a podcast episode on a six series on Think and Grow Rich, the book
Hmm.
that he studied for his whole career, and he passed away in the end of my sixth one. So I dedicated that one to him um, at that time. But yeah, quite a loss to the world. But when you mentioned the caring side to him, I've got to just say, because and I'll say it from the heart, working with him in the seminar industry, before I saw him working with kids, I didn't see the caring side of him. It was more like he was, the guy up on stage getting the information out. And then when he was challenged to work with these kids, and you probably saw it in his personal life with his grandchildren, or his kids and everything like that.
I think on a side note, what you're saying is so apparent when you look into his aura. One of the most dominant energies is what we call within Taoism a metal element. So he perceives himself as a very stoic, sort of to know kind of guy, yet he's very soft and gooey inside. But that's a suppression of a lot of the emotions through the lung channel. Yeah. So, and that heightens your ability to be sensitive to the energetic potential. So most people suppress these emotions. That particular channel can really have a huge effect on your seeking, your creating, when you become more sensitive. And again, it's as we go back to the emotional content. Once that starts to percolate, everything becomes more fluid. And so,
Interesting.
he always had that, but he never showed it.
Right.
Right.
That's probably what hit me when I saw him working with the 12 kids. Now, I'll tell you, there was one moment that it just, where I saw it. The kids were to showcase at the Louisiana Superdome in front of 8,000 people in the audience what they'd learned. Now, going back, remember what you were like in seventh or eighth grade, public speaking. Now, these kids had to do it at the Superdome, and they stood up, and I remember I was in the audience, and there was this one kid, I'll never forget his name, it was Brian Johnson, and he went to talk about what he'd learned, and he couldn't get the words out. It's like he just froze. And so Bob went behind him and rubbed his back, and he was able to speak. And I just remember I started bawling my eyes out. I'm like, first of all, I'd never seen Bob show that amount of care. And it was like you said, it was in him, but I never saw it. And so seeing it, it just floored me. And then that's when I wanted to connect the science. Now I know that all the nerve endings that we have, if you pat someone on the back, you're relaxing them at a brain level. But I don't know if Bob knew that brain stuff. It was probably just instinctual. Let's just rub his back, and he got the words out, and he was fine. He was off to the races. But it was just a moment in time that I saw the inner heart come out, and I just was like, wow, this is it. This is what we're meant to do.
Well, I think what happens is you have that epiphany. It's like elementary, my dear Watson, because someone like himself that is such a big energy, very stoic, very all knowing, there has to be fluidity for him to be able to manifest. So if you're suppressing a certain potential, it won't take place. So as much as there were certain mechanisms that he was using to validate how it is that you arrive to this manifestation, that fluidity was essential to his success. And so sometimes people don't reveal that, yet it's happening on an energetic level, and everything's really energy. Once it becomes that, it's like light to wave to matter to particle. It's all energy realized as the energy potential has a vibration. The vibration has a frequency. That frequency, if met, the resonance of that then you will acquire it. Oh, yes, it will be yours. Oh, yes. And so a lot of people would move that out of the way and sort of go, oh, well, I don't have to have a religious belief system. I don't have to be in a certain sort of mindset. I need to acquire this resonance. Yet there's still a developmental sort of like pathway, in my opinion, to really master that. So you create this synchronicity, serendipity sort of moments of realization. And as you put it, the neuroplasticity of the human body is the tuning fork for your expression of reality.
Right. So you had said, so where did you take that to now? So, that was 25 years ago. I've always been interested in education and making sure that these skills, they're now called social and emotional learning skills. They went into the schools, and that was a process. I've been watching them go across the US. Now they're in the schools. And now my interest is connecting the science to this. So why did those principles work that Bob was teaching back in the day? Those spiritual concepts that a lot of people would say are woo-woo, or, and over the years, I started just taking note of who was doing what, who was manifesting what, even that word manifesting in science is like frowned upon, but who was creating using these concepts. And then I've been trying to match the science to it to explain, like, just what your NASA physicist was talking about. How did my mom beat cancer? By focusing on, the healthy cells, and in her mind, she was chopping up all the cancer cells with an axe. How did she do that? Well, Tom Campbell explained it. She was putting more of an emphasis, a 90% or 99% emphasis on health, and less emphasis on sickness. And so that would be what Bob would say: focus more on the positive, less on the negative. And Tom Campbell brought in the science to it. There is a probability here. We're now putting more of our mind on what we want to happen. And so when I can understand it and explain it by science, that's when I feel like the belief comes in.
Oh yeah, I would have to agree. It's all an experience's validation of self-realization, right?
Right.
It's all. I'm a show me guy. I'm a '80s guy, so I love to do the Pepsi challenge. I'll take it with anybody on this stuff, and show me what it is. You can conceptualize it. You can frame it in all this theory and hypotheses and all this kind of stuff. That's fantastic. But let's get down with the get down. Show me how this actually creates. And so that's why energy is so powerful. It's like from a Taoist alchemy perspective, that's we show people the methods that materialize manifestation, magic, healing, and it can be shown in the now moment. And I think that that's really exciting how you discovered that and your journey to develop it through this lens of science. So where did it take you more? So you went from spiritual sort of like concepts that were, when you spent that much time with Bob, did you feel as though you were absorbing it and being able to apply it in your reality, or it took you until you got to a point where you felt like I digested it and I'm able to deconstruct it using this science lens, and that made it like real to
Yeah.
me?
Yeah, it took some time. So I took everything that I'd learned from Bob, and I put it in a program that I then presented to the schools. And we're going back just as neuroscience was coming into the schools, 2014 maybe. So I was coming at it from the spiritual side. But then when my program got chosen to go into the schools in Arizona with grant funding, I started to get pushback from some of the people, the superintendents and the school administrators that were using it, and saying, whoa, 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 we can't talk about auras in the school. What we need to focus on the brain and how the brain works only. So you need to write another book that takes all the spiritual stuff out and replace it with the brain. And really it's the same, Son, right? It's like, the mind and the brain. So I just created a new book called Level Up that went into our schools and was a part of helping students understand character, leadership, and how their brain works back in the day. And it lasted about, I think, a 6-year time frame that I was working with the schools until 2020 happened and the pandemic, and then I had to really think about what was I going to do with this. Was I just going to try and focus on Arizona? I had some other states that were using the program, and the vision definitely was global, but it didn't go that route. And that's when I launched the podcast. I thought, I'm not doing this for money. I'm just trying to get the word out. Like, why do these concepts work? How can we connect the science to it? And it was really that the one teacher that said it, he was a school administrator. He said, I can't use your program. You have to write another book. And he gave me all these neuroscience books off of this bookshelf, how the brain learns. And he said, you've got to write another book and you've got to go the science route for your work to be taken seriously. And I remember thinking, gosh, this is way above my head. I'm not a neuroscientist. I have barely done any science. I taught science a little bit when I was a teacher, but I didn't have the science background. I really wanted to hang out with those smart science kids when I was in school, but I wasn't one of them. So for me to understand this and be able to teach it to others, I think it just shows us that anyone can, because I didn't have that solid background. And so that's really where my podcast started, Neuroscience Meets Social and Emotional Learning. And that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years in my spare time. This is just a give back. In my full-time work, I'm focused on still doing work in the schools, focused on learning the science, how science impacts our learning, our brain, how we can continue that route. But the podcast is really where I'm focused. And then taking the learning that came over the years, things that happened, getting a stronger mind. The Silva method was something that I heard over and over again in the 80s and 90s. Like, everyone would say, do you know about Jose Silva and his mind control method? And I remember thinking, no, like, what is that? Write it down. And then over the years, that was one of the ways that I learned to visualize through Jose Silva's work. It's all about visualizing on the screen of your mind. His program, he's long gone now, but his program's gone into Mind Valley, and Vishen Lakhiani has redone it. He's done a brilliant job. And when you get the statistics for your podcast from Spotify, it tells you, these are the episodes people are listening to the most. People were listening like 222% more times to the Silva method on my podcast. So it showed me people want to know how to improve their visualization, how to improve these skills with using the power of their minds. That's where most of my listeners are coming from.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with you. It's like, I guess it's sort of understanding that potential, but it has to arise from something, right? Over doing this over 32 years, everyone has this. I've been teaching internal alchemy for over 30 years. It's kind of crazy. Wow. It's about the proof is in the pudding. Okay. So, within Taoist alchemy, that's been around thousands and thousands. And the proof is shown by what you're able to do with the electromagnetic spectrum within this 3D reality. And it's proven to you in the physicality, in the material world, what you can actually alter within that potential. And you start with a periodic table, but you're really taking the potential, the energetic potential, and materializing something that would not be possible. It's potentially paranormal, superhuman. So there's through my observation over doing this, I would always measure my brainwaves, and whenever I get into gamma, I would witness physical healing. So when I get into 100 to 400 hertz brainwave, you're seeing crazy stuff. And then it doesn't really match, say, someone like a Hawkins. I never really was resonating that much with his understanding of what consciousness was, or his scale of measuring that. And it would reference, a lot of people would say, well, we're not talking about brainwaves, it's a scale. Well, that's how I would measure it, when I hit this point, this is mediumship. I'm able to communicate quite well with the spirit world. When I hit this point, I'm having direct channel source information through this physical vessel, and I transmute it. I'm just nothing more than just a talking head from the information. And then when you do the healing, the brainwave goes into you go into a different brainwave. And this is really exciting. And I assume that's exciting for you as you're using these tools to measure your results. And it really is. And it still comes back to the experience. It still comes back to that validation. I feel like there's a lot going on right now in the world where science is being dismissed because they want to feel it. They want to experience it. They're like, okay, that's great. You tell me quantum physics is this and this and this, the mechanics is this and this and this. But if I can't experience it myself, what does it mean to me? It's like, and that truly is what I think is the most powerful validator for anybody. What do you find? Do you find that's a closing sort of like validation for yourself through your own research?
Yeah, so over the years, things have happened, right? You take note of things. Like in my late 20s, I started to be able to see things on the screen of my mind. That's when it started. And I remember when I was moving to Arizona, I was at the airport and I was just resting and I closed my eyes for a minute and it happened first. I saw an image and I thought, what is that? And you just dismiss it, right? Because it's new. I don't know what it is. But over the years, those images became very important to take note of. So, you could just go through your day and forget about it. But I remembered those images. So they were warnings that, be careful of this. And it would flash in my head and I would be like, what is that? And then, so take note of those things. And then let's say 25 years later, I would go, I know exactly what that was. So it's gaining the belief that clairvoyance is what really it is. That's what I was developing. It's clairvoyance. And then clairaudience came in later. Hearing things like, and you think, okay, Andrea, this sounds crazy, but I've heard it from so many other people. They hit ice in their car and they hear a voice of reason. It's not crazy voices. It's a voice that comes that is coming from somewhere that you can tap into. So it's starting to understand what these things are and then using it. For me, it started coming as well in the dream world. Proctor would tell us, write down your dreams, wake up, write them down, and then you can start to see themes. And I've been doing that since the late 90s. So looking at my life, my day life, what can I learn from the dream world? And it transfers. It absolutely transfers. There's no mistaking it that these strange things, clairaudience, clairvoyance, dream world, they're all coming into my day life and warning me when I need to be warned, go that way, not that way. And it's just gaining the belief of listening to these signs or learning that it's all connected. Everything, the spiritual world, the intellectual, and I'm just here in my physical body trying to tap in and learn what these messages are so that I can go different ways and navigate life with more success, more peace, more understanding, and then hopefully try to teach this stuff on the podcast in a way that I don't sound so crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I always suggest or promote method, understanding the cultivation, and that's where yes, I'm a fanboy, yes, I'm an ordained Taoist priest and all that kind of good stuff. Maybe I'm a little biased, but Taoist alchemy is second to none because these skills are all validated and they're cultivated and they're expansive. And once you learn one, it elevates. Like I always tell people, sensory perception starts with what you perceive as your first five senses, and then you can say something, hear something, and see something in your mind. There's another three. Bam. Okay, you're at eight. Let's go even greater than that into developing these skills, as you so put it, a clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling. These are all part of this understanding or the sensory development. And from a Taoist perspective, once you develop those skills, they're equalized and you're not excessive or deficient in certain ones, which is why people get this glimpse. That's why I have people chasing the spiritual dragon. They spend their life, they get a vision, they see grandma, they hear something, they get a gut feeling, this paranormal, supernatural, intuitive things that have taken place. They get a taste of it, and then they get drawn back into their mundane intellect, their day-to-day, their processes from a humanistic perspective, and they go, I want more of that other stuff. What happened? I just got a bump on my head and it happened, or I had a dream and it was very vivid, it was lucid, it's all these things, and they can't repeat it. And what I'm about and Taoism methods is about repeating all that. And when you regulate it, you can have your cake and eat it. That means that every aspect is developed at the same level and it expands at the same level. So from a Taoist perspective, all things, the whole existence of everything is a bellows. And the bellows is that you are all things and nothing at the same time. And so when you're all things and nothing at the same time, people go, Jiffa, what in Tao's name does that even mean? Well, that's the potential of the now. And from a Taoist perspective, you get into the Wu Ji. And the Wu Ji is the stillness between the breath in and the breath out. Once you enter that, you enter the mother. The mother is all things. Perfection manifest. That, just be saying this and you have a visceral feeling, you're getting chills in your body, that shows you that this is real. And people go, well, how do you even know I'm getting chills? Because I can see it first with my eyes and then I experience it. And people go, holy crap, you can see that? Yeah, that's just a skill. And you develop that skill. And it's like the excitement, the oscillating that we're both experiencing right now is the potential that's happening. And so, once you get that, you can repeat it and it becomes more and more set. And from a neuroscience perspective, you are creating new synapses in your brain, information energy highways. You're developing a skill that can be refined and never leaves you. It can stay with you from that potential.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. As you're talking, and I'm gaining more understanding and more trust in the process, because you're absolutely right. It takes time, and so I remember my mom studying in back in Toronto. She was in finance. She really should be she should have been in education, but she went into finance. And she would be studying for these Lomas tests. Every Thursday night, she'd close the door in this one room and she'd be studying. And these tests kept going on all year. And the next year, I thought, what are you really doing in there? And she was studying this stuff. She was invited into one of these secret societies that you're not supposed to talk about, but Sylvia Brown has a book and she mentions the one that my mom was in. And so my mom had this big box of material that went back to Francis Bacon's days. And when she knew I was interested in this stuff, she gave me the box and she said, you can't tell anybody that I've given you this material. It's like secret. And I remember, why is it secret? I don't understand. And so I have this box of material and I've been going through it, and it's more than I can ever have understand in my lifetime. It's just, I'm in the very first stage of it, and it goes through different degrees, and just getting to where you are, your level of understanding and awareness. That's my goal in my lifetime, is just to increase and be more comfortable with what this is from a science point of view, so I don't feel so out there with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like it is appealing, but sometimes it's not, because the science to a lot of people is you're in over their head, even though you can
Mhm.
describe a
Right.
sort of a neural understanding, the simplicity of that, how you change someone's brainwave state instantaneously by affecting, the self receptors on the dermal layer of the skin, and all of a sudden information's going right into the gene itself. You're able to alter that using your pituitary thalamus and pineal gland. You're changing the alchemical process. You're using the blood as the culture medium, that messenger that creates whatever it is you want, that secret sauce. You know what I'm saying? So all this is like layered upon layered upon layered, and you have these different levels. It's like, oh, maybe I want to sit down and listen to Bob, and from Bob, I'll couple it with a little splash of Lipton, or maybe, hey, a little Greg Braden, if you want to just get right into the empathy and the connection with humanity, a greater knowing that it's out there. And there's this soft sort of like silky way to move into these things. But I still feel, and I use that word, preface that word from a linguistic perspective, and that I'm sure you go into that a lot with people, that linguistics is like a messenger in of itself, and it activates this innate ability that you're resonating with at a subatomic level of all things. That's why you gravitate to things. It's words, numbers, symbols, letters, within, homeostasis of a lot of my friends, dear friends, are like, remote viewers. I teach people how to remote view. Ideograms, how you get that, how you have this symbiotic relationship with your conscious and unconscious process, develop these skills so you can repeat them, and they're customized to you. And so, I think it's amazing. I think it's incredible that we're on this journey and we can discover this stuff and make sense of it so that other people can also, you know, raise their consciousness.
Exactly. And just I remember talking to my mom about this stuff when she passed on the box to me. She was a master at it, at this stuff. She used it for her work life. She used it for healing her body. And then she said, now, take this and see what you can do with it. And I knew I was wanting to go the route of education, but schools are complex places. You've got to be so careful with what you put into them. So it had to go the neuroscience route, which is what brought me to where I am today. But I'm still drawn to the other side, the side that you're covering on your podcast. When I'm interviewing certain people, some friends will say, ask this question. Can you ask about aliens coming out of the water? And I'm like, no, I can't ask that question. I'm not talking about aliens on a neuroscience podcast, but that's what people want to know. Like, what is out there in the world? And I saw that you cover that on your podcast. I'm just not that brave yet to ask those questions.
Oh,
And I know it's out there, right?
absolutely. I mean, 30 years ago, when someone would come to me with a psychotic episode, and they'd be suggested that they should, admit themselves for psych evaluation, we'd go deeper. And one of my lineages that I'm ordained in, we specialize in simple things like exorcisms. And people are like, what is that? Well, that's religious, ancient ritual stuff that's been going on for thousands of years. And, my background is in ancient Asian culture. And so Asia is full of superstition, and that you become the master, keeper, creator of your reality, and you are generating whatever is coming to you. So you get to mold and shift that, and be careful what you wish for, is what I always remind people, right? So that you call in that energetic potential, those spirits and entities, which there are an infinite amount of, will find their way to your front door and entertain you, as my dear friend Tom Campbell would say, at the level of the large consciousness system, will show you what it is that you're looking for and give you that potential. And from a Taoist perspective, it's a mirroring effect. So whatever it is, it will be materialized in your reality instantly. And we always refer to it as the gift is your offering. And this is part of absorbing the riches, which is a finer cultivational practice within the Taoist alchemy. And so one of the really, I always share this incantation from the Jade Emperor, one of my teachers, who's an immortal. And I tap into that energy every day. I have over 171 different teachers. They are facets of what we call perfection, which is the mother. The perfection is the diamond. And the facets of that are the dialogue that I have with these energies, these spirits that give me access to what a new age spiritual person would call the Akashic record. I call it direct source mother energy. And from that dialogue, I create the monologue. And the monologue is the now moment, is that center point, that now. And all this stuff is always so fascinating because there's never a right or wrong way. Tom and I always talk about this. It's like, oh well, he loves it because a lot of his people will listen to what he's saying and go, I don't get it, but when San Qing says it, I get it. And the same thing goes for my audience. Oh, I listened to San Qing and I'm not getting it, but the second I listen to Tom, aha, I got it now. And it's all how you're perceiving your reality, right? That's what it comes down to. And those aha moments is that visceral kinesthetic response that you have that gives you the validation. And that's why I always remind people, it's like, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And when you feel it, all bets are off. It goes right back to that simplicity. What are your thoughts on that?
So I can just go right back to when I knew what I was meant to do, when I watched Bob on stage with those teens and it hit me like a brick. That was feeling. I started crying, and I remember there were all these celebrities around at the time in the seminars. There was Melanie Griffith was there. There was some famous athlete there, and they were all standing in line waiting to get autographs from Proctor. And I'm standing over here bawling my eyes out. And I was like so embarrassed because I remember thinking, like, I don't even know why I'm crying. But it was the feeling. It was the moment of truth. This is it. Take notice and don't forget this moment. And so I just remember saying, sorry, I'm sorry. And then, going about my day. But that moment, it's etched in me forever. So that feeling, I knew I meant to do this. I meant to do something with kids with this material. Now it went back and forth over 25 years to get to where I am now with it. But the feeling, and I remember when I interviewed Proctor years ago on the podcast, he said, "You'll never go wrong if when you're tapped into that feeling." He's like, don't ever doubt that. When you sense that feeling, you'll never go wrong. And that's what you're saying. It's all bets are off. You go with your heart. And that's really what's guided me through the years, like, what position am I going to take? Is it this one? Is it that one? Go with the heart. And I feel it in like the pit of my stomach. It's like when that brick hit me. So what chakra is that? I'm just starting to learn that it's the energy when it flows through. Listen to the feeling in the body to guide you with life decisions. And so that's really what it is. All bets are off. Go with what feels right. You can go into Abraham Hicks talked about it with going, you don't want to go upstream, like go with the things that are difficult. Go with the downstream when it feels right, in your body, the job you're supposed to go for, the direction you're supposed to take. It feels right. The minute it's upstream and it's hard, it's not that we're not supposed to do difficult things. It's just going with the flow, the feeling more.
What an interesting choice of words. Well, the reason I say that is it became quite an interesting, profound realization for most people when Bruce Lee was interviewed just before his passing back in the 70s. And people were fascinated by the way he was talking about the flow. And the flow was his pursuit of Taoist alchemy. He had a Taoist teacher and he was being trained in Taoist alchemy. And all his realizations were coming from what we call the magical register. Now, the magical register to a Taoist is what we call the Tao Te Ching. And I just recently transcribed the 2024 version with my personal teacher that I train with on a daily basis, Latsu. And I have a relationship with him where I see him as clearly as I see you. I hear him. He's very present in everything that I do and is teaching me on a minute by minute basis, never leaving the deeper understanding. And that transcribing of that is really powerful. Like most people are like, holy crap, because it's when we call a magical register, every verse is an incantation. So the incantation has 81 levels of conscious development. And with that, it has a frequency. And so you have a frequency conscious developed level of awareness that comes with the visceral linguistics. So when you speak it, you will feel it through your whole body. And you're like, whoa, this is no joke, right? This is really happening to me. And then on top of that, you go deeper with a shape and a color, which goes deeper into the sacred geometry that we use within Taoism, that is a deep-seated sort of part of the magic. And magic for Taoists is nothing more than a much more deeply constructed manifestation. So you just get to understand that potential and use that energetic potential and level your awareness. And I feel like you're discovering this through your mother's teaching that she shared with you, or all that stuff that she's given to you. And, you know, I would say, having done this for as long as I have consciously, and I've done it for probably 1,000 lives before this, I stopped counting at that point. But like, I normally give people like 9 lives. I'll give them a past life reading leading up to this life, so they have a greater understanding of who they are, and all the pieces go into place. And people are like, whoa, I experience it. And as you refer to it, you see it through your third eye. Now, for me, I can see everything clearly with my eyes open. It's like a computer screen where all the colors, all the images, all the information is just in front of me. All I do is look in a direction and it will give me the potential, the information. That's where, you know, I like doing what I call psychic drive-bys, like Black Ops drive-by readings. And people are like, what are you talking about? Well, you know, I'm out here in Nevada, Las Vegas, so we'll go down on the strip and I'll take my kids out and we'll do street magic, and we go into different facets of that. So it'll be you might ask someone, because everyone's out here partying, they want to have a good time. So it's great to get my kids to train in their clairvoyant stuff, remote viewing, channeling, healing, and I always recommend everyone should start with something as simple as the basic understanding of like hypnosis. That's a great way to just enter into a deeper way to merge the conscious and unconscious. And so, you get into it. And so I'll walk up to someone and say, would you like a reading? And they're like, sure, give me a reading, magic man. And the thing is the thing that sobers everyone up is that when you tap into their information, and I always start from the bottom up, because people become buyer remorse very quickly. Because at first they're like, sure, give me a reading. Yeah, whoa, I can't wait. By the time I get to we start with 9 energy centers between the seeker, the earth, and the universe. This is the gateway you start to get into your energetic potential, the alchemy. So once you regulate those energy centers, and from a Hindu perspective, you refer to chakras. We call them dantians within Taoism. And a dantian is basically an energetic field. And that, in definition, is what that is. And then we go into the nidan, which is the internal alchemy. And nigong is the internal power you derive from that internal alchemy. So you develop these skills. And so I'll ask them, and they'll be like, yeah. And so I get from the first energy center, then I do the second one, which a Hindu would call the root chakra, which is really their first energy center, because they only read the first 7. And so by the time I get to the sexual energy, they're like, whoa, you can stop now. And they're like, this is real. Yeah, but you need to understand something. I'm not I'm not looking for you to validate whether I'm the next coming of Jesus or I'm the next holy grail healer of the next 5 stars of the energetic potential of Reiki masters. It's when you understand how to develop these skills, the clairsensors are like, they are instant. They're like icons on a screen, and you will dip into that immediately, and it will be validated for you in this 3D reality. And there's no coming back from that. People go, what? You don't know me. I didn't meet you like 3 seconds ago. How did you acquire that? Or it's you got into my head or whatever. This is the energetic potential that you speak of, right?
Yeah, definitely. And what as I'm still working and developing and learning, I still and I know belief is all there. It's all about the belief. So I don't want to ever doubt. But son, have you ever wanted something and went for it and it didn't happen? And and then I don't want to say that I don't believe anymore, but it's like what happened there? Why do some things not happen that
Well,
I
well,
don't know.
well. I'm sorry. Were you asking me that question, or
Yeah, I'm wondering because I don't know the answer because
what? Yeah, go ahead.
I've only ever the belief. The belief is always there and you put do all the things that you're supposed to do. You put your energy into something and what if it doesn't work the way that you see? I just wonder from your point of view, is it this wasn't meant to be that and you just have to pivot? There's what's
Oh,
for you won't go by you type of idea. Is that really
well. I mean, yeah. I mean, really, everyone has the same potential. There's no exceptions to the rule. There's not one. You just frame it from an unconscious perspective, and you literally take the wind out from your sails just with the linguistic construct of how you perceive your reality. So that in of itself will literally hinder your potential just from that energetic potential. And it's not it's so simplistic, yet people don't realize that. I always, because I like teaching all the different aspects. So whether it's like graphology, body language, linguistics, I teach people all that stuff so they understand when they're being manipulated by a wannabe NLPer or someone who thinks they're the grand master wizard of hypnosis. All these things they're gateways to a cultivational practice. Now, to level up on your spirituality is a completely different ballgame. And when I talk about channeling or Bob Proctor coming in from a frequency level, that has nothing to do with the basic fundamentals of energetic potential for the human being from a neurology perspective. We're on a whole different base or resonance. And so you're just the simplicity of the fear of failure is enough for you to fall short of your desires.
got
And
it?
it's not that you are not like, oh, you're not special, you're not going to get your gifts this reincarnation. No, you are 100%. I can tell you right now, 100% you're going to achieve your goal because the potential is there, the curiosity is there, the seeking is there. Now you could acquire it right now. Let's look at it from a neuroplasticity perspective. I always tell people, yes, I consciously fell into this, going from something completely physical into spiritual, instantaneously acquiring literally mastery skills in the first couple of days of me doing this 30 years ago. And then I went down the route of developing an understanding from a priest perspective and developing all the skills that are taught to me and all the rituals and all that kind of stuff. But the potential and your ability to access it is now. That's it. So what does that mean? It means from a neuroplasticity perspective, you have mirror neurons, I have mirror neurons. If you see me acquire something or develop something that you thought wasn't possible, it's now possible if you witness it. And that's why the potential is always there. That's why, some of the energetic practices, they sort of fall short. I'm always a guy that likes to see and witness physical healings, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. That's been my bag for my whole time. I saw it instantaneously, literally within a few days of me starting this path. I see it on a daily basis, and it accesses this now. It's a now moment. And Tom and I have had this conversation. If you listen to that podcast, the first one, we go into what that potential is and the probability of that. And so for you, it's just the fear of failure that doesn't exist. And when we go back to contracting and expanding, so you're all things and nothing at the same time, your potential from your dear friend Bob would be, is your glass half full or empty? That's it. I mean, that all of this neuroscience, all this other stuff, it's like Bob is the profound prophet. The charge that you're getting here right now with me is your aha moment of going, I've been involved in this and experiencing this for so many years, and you already have the answers within you, as we all do. This is the center point, right? I don't know whether you went down the path of heart math as a way of sort of like looking at the relationship between the brain and the heart and the gut. Now, from a Taoist perspective, we talk about it. This is the upper dantian. This is the sun. This is where all the light comes in. This is the middle dantian. This is the earth. This is where all the information comes in. The lower dantian is the moon, and that is your energy potential. And that's the primordial mother. So thousands and millions of years ago, the mother connected with the sun, creating the earth. And so there's this other deeper layer of understanding. And when I say these things, you're like, I don't need to research it. I feel it. I'm like, he's just saying stuff that it's like, I'll have whatever he's having because you have a visceral response to that validates what I'm speaking of. It's like, I don't need to read the book. I'm getting it right now. Now, what I would say from that is as a seeker is to find methods that are repeatable and validate this self-realization. So this is the part where you're still seeking those methods, because if you had them, you would be constantly realizing it and knowing that you're there. But look, I was a skeptic from the beginning. I remember when one of the first times I healed someone was over the phone. I did a training in distance healing, literally, and I took everything at face value. It was like, okay, this is the kickoff sheet. It's like, I have a script here. It says, do this, this, and this, and this, and then this will happen. And that's how I looked at it. I didn't go, oh, you know what? Am I aligned with God and Jesus? Do I have my heart open? Am I in love? Am I part of the world? Am I doing this for the betterment of mankind? No, I just went off the list and went and over. This was so crazy because the woman that I did the healing on, she'd called me and said, hey, look, at that point back in the day, we had rotary phones, not our fancy cell phones. They were still conceptual for a lot of people, expensive in those days. Yeah. Now, when I got this phone call, she's like, I can't meet you. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. Yeah, I sprained my ankle. It's the size of a watermelon. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. Okay, well, I'll catch up with you next week. And she was about to get off the phone. And I go, whoa, hang on. And she's like, what? Well, I learned this thing today. And I've got it in front of me. Can I try it on you? He's like, what are you talking about? I sprained my ankle. I can't go anywhere. You're talking to me on the phone. What do you mean? Just bear with me. Can you just hear me out here can I just try it? And she's like, oh, please hurry up. Whatever you think that is, it's not going to do anything to me. I got a swollen ankle. I went through it and I said, now, just listen to what I'm saying. We call this an incantation. At the end, I'm going to repeat this incantation and let's see what happens. She's like, yeah, okay. And so I went through the script. And then at the end of that, we're on the phone. And I repeated the incantation, which was heal, 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 heal. And you can feel that buildup of energetic potential, just me saying that, right? And the next thing that came out of her mouth was, what? And she was screaming it through the phone, like expletives, like really, like, what are you doing? What is that? What did you do to me? And I'm like, what? Well, what? My ankle shrunk before my very eyes, and I'm standing on it right now. And I'm like, and you know what my response was? Bullshit. Get out of here. You're full of it. Because I was like, oh, I'll read the script with no expectation. Right. No, like, oh, this is going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. What's going to happen? And it happened because that's the now. That's accessing the now moment, and that's available to anybody. And so your method initially, this is me remembering who I am. It's really what everyone needs to do is return to their potential, return to the center point. And so you find the way that happens. Now, that was my glimpse of chasing the dragon. It just never stopped, right? So I accessed that. And to be honest with you, a few days before, I'd never meditated before. So I went into it. I was curious. There was a voice in my head going, you're a bodybuilder. And at that point, I was a bodybuilder and powerlifter. So you want to talk about shifting gears. I had everything was about crushing things and pushing things and throwing things. And there was, I got to a point where the physicality was so dramatically being stressed. It was being stressed. So my body was saying, the hubcaps are coming off the wheels. You're going 100 miles an hour. You need to potentially step back. And even as a young man, it was a lot. I was lifting a lot of weight. I was very strong. And so this voice is like, you need to try meditation. I'm like, in those days, meditation was Hare Krishnas and, singing Kumbaya and all this kind of people would say sort of new age weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, no one really knew it. So I went into a meditation class thinking I'm not going to get anything. I'm not a still, the definition was stillness, right? You got to quiet your mind. I don't do quiet mind. So I'm thinking I'm not going to get anything out of this. But so I looked around trying to find it. And so I found this class from this woman who was a grand master of Qigong, this tiny little, she was maybe 45 pounds. And she had it in this rec center in the middle of nowhere, right? So I'm thinking, I'm probably going to get killed getting back to my car after I leave this rec center in the ghetto somewhere. And I'm hearing the dogs barking, all this weird noise, all this craziness. And so I sit there and she goes, guess what? I want you to listen to my voice. And I'm thinking, lady, in my head, I'm like, there's too much noise. It's like, I'm afraid for my life at this point. I'm this overgrown gorilla trying to sit in a lotus position. My back is aching. I'm looking around the room, half a dozen misfits like myself looking for a freebie because it's, hey, what am I getting out of this? I got to get something. And literally, I'm not kidding you. She said, listen to my voice. And then she said, and everything will fall away. And then it turned into.
Wow.
And I went, what?
Wow.
And it literally didn't go away. It didn't go away for the whole time. And then she slowly delved into my consciousness where it was just her voice that I was hearing, nothing else.
Wow.
And then it was an incredible transformation, but that was my taste, right? And everyone has that potential. And I think part of me pursuing helping people to learn this stuff is that no one is an exception to the rule. That means that everyone has the ability to do this. And I think that's why you pursuing the neurology scientific part helps you validate that. But I would suggest that you find a method that works, that is repeatable. And if you haven't found it, that's okay. You're still looking. But you got to find something that you can actually create a result, because you're going to be your humanistic response is reproduce and repeat it another day. Survival. That's the basic instinct of a human being. And to remove that fear is to become fearless. To become fearless, you become knowing. And that knowing is realizing an experience to validate that. And you've definitely answered that for yourself just with the energetic potential, the physicality. Your body's speaking to you, but you need to be able to make it palpable. What we call it the substance, the chi, which is mother. And so when you're able to really hone in that skill, and from that you master the 50 trillion cells, which is your physical body, and you access the potential, the energetic potential, which is the 0.07 millivolts of electricity that is a potential of the physical body. And so when you start doing that, then you keep removing the skepticism that comes with being a human being seeking something greater, and you become knowing because you keep validating it for yourself. And so if you don't have enough validation, of course, it's going to be disheartening, and you're going to be like, well, I've got it down. It tells me this, this, and this, yet I don't have enough, aha moments for it to be real. Like I have a good week and 4 or 5 things are really cool. And then I have several weeks where they're not cool, and it's starting to dishearten me. But it clearly is not, because you're still pursuing it, and it is the core of who you are. You
Right.
just now need to. You're still looking for that thing that will resonate with you and validate. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And over the years there's definitely tools that I have. Living in Arizona, there's always workshops. Like, oh, go to this workshop and learn, how to bend spoons with your mind. Like stuff like that. It's always been there. And I've always done stuff like that. Um and and going to classes, and pendulums have been one to get yes no answers. That I feel like I've been doing that for 20 years, so I get a good yes no, that also rings through the body. But what if that rings through the body and then it doesn't work? That's where I think I'm stuck, so trying to figure
Well, yeah.
that out.
What someone like a psychotherapist or a hypnotherapist would call ideomotor response. So that's part of like that pendulum expression, dowsing forks, pendulums, tarot cards. These are all this potential, energetic potential, speaking through your barometer, your tuning fork, your physicality, and you have to now refine the yin and yang potential so that you're 100% accurate. And that's where the gut, the heart, and the brain become so critical, because if the energy is not regulated, you will get a false positive or negative. So this is where people get caught up in and fall short of things, because when you're getting a feeling, the visceral feeling, yet because you're not regulated, your micro of a macro, being you're an expression of the universe is you, you are the universe, is not fluid. There's what we call dukkha. From my dear friend Martin, the Buddhist monk, he would describe the dukkha, the distortion of the emotions that will alter this yes no. You're like, I got the gut feeling on that person, and it was right last week, but it wasn't this week. And I led with my heart, and it was right 50% of the time. I think with my head, it's a 20-70, or sometimes it's 70-30. That's where you must really refine the energetic potential by getting into those practices and getting into the alchemy, because then you're never, ever going to be left with that. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's where the work lies. So how do I refine the energetic potential? Just by more study, more.
Well,
Um,
it now has to be repeatable, right? So,
yeah.
Bob is the manifestation grandmaster wizard, right? And yet
Yeah.
he was definitely masking emotional probabilities or potential probabilities. And, we all have it. Like, I see some irregularities in your aura, but guess what? We all have it. It's just a snapshot. It's like taking blood work from somebody. Your energetic potential can change by second-to-second basis. What
Mm,
happens is you need to be able to create a method where that visceral feeling can be accessed at will, and you will be able to validate it. And, that comes from a cultivational practice. You have to find what it is that you love that can be shown to you as a developmental repeatable skill that will acquire that. Now, that's for you to decide. And
right.
and then you've got to find that, as you said, you're in Arizona. Have you bent spoons before?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Now, at what degree? I have 3 levels that I teach people at. First is the tactile, focusing on the center point, and it bends like butter,
Like
right?
butter.
Yeah, a
That,
little
that one.
physicality, right?
Yeah.
And then the next one is you take it, you hold the spoon, and then you melt it like a candle. And then the
Yeah.
third one is you take a fork and you move the prongs in either direction, just holding the stem. These are developmental skills that you create. So you've already accessed the potential with a tactile physical force. You use your attention, intention, and that moment is no different than watching physical flesh return to its default setting. So when you're feeling that, there's an actual wiggling of a visual effect that takes place. When you look at a physical healing, you'll
Yeah.
see it wiggle and shift its shape and go back to its original state. and it's similar in its energetic potential when you bend a spoon, because it's the same thing. You're changing the construct of it. And when you change it and you feel that change, it just goes like that. It just bends. And was that the same experience that you had? Was it just bent for you? You're like, whoa, it bent. Was
Like
it,
hunger.
how easy? How easy was it?
Yeah. From hard to easy.
Right, right. And so that is the gateway drug for anybody, because it's no different to a manifestation. It's no different to a physical healing, is that potential.
Got
But
it.
now you have to step past, well, I don't believe that.
Right.
So it's like, all of this is steeped in the belief system. So you need to then have a practice that will step you past that and go, well, that's kind of funny. It's kind of fun playing around with that stuff, but what is that going to work? How is it exactly? What will that do with my reality? Am I going to help millions of people by teaching them how to bend spoons for the rest of my life? What you're looking for, a much larger platform to level up humanity, not get them to become the next Barnaby circus freak show act of bending spoons.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So that next level is acquiring the skill. From a Taoist perspective, that's quite simple. You always start at the baseline. The first thing we ever do, if you're out of the box and you come as a Taoist seeker, is to master your emotions. That's like the kindergarten version. And people are like, well, did you say master my emotions? That's impossible. Oh, absolutely not. That should be the first thing any seeker of any kind understands, that is the deception. And the second you realize that it's not real, and you're able to move it off the like an icon on a computer screen, move that state instantaneously, you become all empowered. You're like, holy crap, this is real. I can go from angry to bliss state in a fraction of a second.
Definitely. Definitely. Yep. The mastering of the emotions has definitely been a game changer. Being able to stay in the present moment, feeling the present moment, and thinking that, when you get off course or off kilter, that it's not reality, that reality is my reality of what I create, not what is outside of me.
And would you say that you're there?
Yes. Yeah, definitely now, 10 years ago, no. And there's certain things that hit me and can bring me off kilter, like the kids leaving their clothes on the ground can momentarily shift me back into that. But the meditation has really helped over the years to just pretty much stay calm, and nothing seems to rattle me.
Well, stay calm. Now here's an interesting admission of your own. So stay calm, realizing that potential, being able to mimic it, but to be it, to be no place, person, or thing. First person, third person, no person. Present moment is that. And that result will be an instant manifestation, an instant healing, and instant magic. And so that will be repeatable. So there's conceptual parts where you can mask it and you can be very stoic and very in tune and very neutral from your own potential. Yet if someone can blow on you and you can go into 100+ miles an hour, there's things that you could easily quickly heal from. That you see, a lot of people tend to focus on the trauma. From a Taoist perspective, everything is yin and yang. That's it. It's not good or bad. It's not up or down. It's yin or yang. And people are like, well, what does that mean? Well, that's whatever you're subject to within this dualistic perception. So dualism is part of the expression of this electromagnetic spectrum. It's like that's what you're working with within this field, within this realm. And, you want to access that present moment, which is what people would call the 5D, stepping past the fourth dimensional reality, which is space-time, time-space. But you were already in 4D because we're observing the 3D. Now, where does it meet? The rubber meets the road is just like your dear friend Bob would say, you know, you want more of the good stuff. It's a good day. You know, when someone asks me, how are you today? I'm always like, it's good to be me. And people are like, whoa. Okay, so that feeling is evident. You're able to acquire that feeling. And from a neuroplasticity perspective, that can be instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to maintain that resonance is another thing. So you're now let's just look at the potential as everything turns into energy from your attention intention from the light. Light manifests into material, into energy. It's now energy, the energy potential. Then it has a vibration, and that vibration has a frequency. That frequency has to be met. And you'll find this happens to you a lot, as it does everyone, as you're on a spiritual path of awakening and cultivating, is that you can be in a space and people will love you or hate you. There's only two options. And it doesn't matter what it is. And you're like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. They just take one look at you and they're like, I don't like you. What how does that even work? What are you talking about? Because of your resonance. So
Right.
you're creating a resonance that then evokes their emotional content. They identify it as a place, person, or thing, and you have potential issues that you have to now work at because guess what? Your resonance is affecting this change. But you
Mhm.
also have to realize that that potential can be instantly transferred into healing. And you have, you know, that physical healing is like it's like that quick. You know, it's not a let me take some time. I got to work at this. This is,
Right.
and that's why the method is always important because once you get the method down, you know, normally when I train people to start with this stuff, it starts with the first 9 weeks mastering your emotions. And
Yeah.
that means that within the first second of you acquiring any skill, I will want you to measure it. And people are like, well, how do you do that? Because a lot of this spiritual new age stuff, all of it is like, I want you to come on a journey with me and we'll go through all these practices and I need you to repeat them and come back to me and tell me your experience and we'll work. It's like, no, I'm not that guy. I want to
Right.
see it. So
Right.
the first, and people appreciate that. It's like if you put in time investing into your cultivation, if you were walking, if you were eating right, if you were exercising, part of the material, you would see a result. It's like I spent 3 days eating right and I lost 2 pounds. Or I walked around the block 5 times and I lost 2 pounds. Or I did some exercise and now I'm fitter than I ever have. I can run up a hill. These are measurable results for a human being. And that should never be any different than your spiritual potential. And so I like to share with people when they start their path, they need to be able to measure it on a day to day basis because that reinforces their realization. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and you use the neurology to do that. And I always get people they can instantly within the first time they ever experience anything access using an exercise I teach them to realize their potential. And they go, "How did you didn't do it?" Like, you know, I created an app that people use, and so they just turn it on, and literally you could be a janitor at McDonald's, the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, Dalai Lama, the next coming of Jesus. The second you hit play, if you're a human being and you have neurology, you are toast. And people go, hang on a second, I didn't do anything. I just hit play. The visual audible experience creates the kinesthetic charge that is your validation and it becomes repeatable. You groove it in there and people are like, I hit play and literally I feel like I've had 5 pina coladas, a full body massage in 10 days in the Bahamas. How does that work? And that's
Right.
where you're like at that place where I want to understand how it works. I'm using the science to develop that. And this is part of the pathway because once you repeat it, and you know, I get all the myriad of like stories. You know, I started this thing, and next minute I healed this, and I did that, and I manifested this, and because you're getting what it does is it creates a regularity in your energetic potential. Your field becomes regular. And so then you demystify this. Well, I don't believe in Jesus or God, or I don't have this spiritual practice, or I don't go to church. Here we go. And I'm not dismissing that because I'm a priest. I believe in Taoism. Taoism is a philosophy and a religion from a priest perspective. But you want something that works for you. You need, it's essential. as a human being, what do we always fall into? That hetero action, right? What you start, you must finish. It's a cycle.
Definitely. Yep. This is good. And this is when you were talking and saying, we attract or repel certain people. That's why I really wanted to meet you, because I heard your stuff and I felt the connection, and I thought, I need something. There's a lot that I'm missing. That's the next step. And just putting all the pieces together with Tom Campbell's interview with you really helped. And then it drew me to understanding, the Akashic records, things that I have questions over the years that I don't really understand. And there's not really a place to go to learn this, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, your ability to channel is part of everybody. We're all part of the conscious collective. You are me, I am you. So once you refine that access point and you can repeat the resonance, it becomes instantaneous. It's like we're having this conversation. I'm dancing through the constellations and embodying planets with the energetic potential and feeling it viscerally through my body. And that's what some people would consider what we call an out-of-body experience. Once you refine it, it becomes instantaneous. That's how it should be. So it's remembering who you are through the method of cultivation, and then you can repeat it over and over and over again, as you should be. I mean, the now moment is for everybody. It's not just an exclusive clique that only comes to the very few, the grand poupard of the fourth energetic potential of the seventh moon of the nine whatevers. And you hop on one foot with a llama's palm and a rabbit's ear, and you're singing the sweet nothings to the moon. I mean, these are all rituals, right? But they're all part of that potential. But that doesn't exclude anybody. Absolutely, there's no limit to what you're able to do. And I think that this is what conversations like the ones that you and I are having right now are so important for people, because I love having these conversations with people, because either my students, 126ers, subscribers, they listen and it's an experience. Mm-hmm. And they're like, man, when you guys are talking, any guest that I have on, it's an actual visceral experience for them, because they're feeling the amplitude of the energetic potential between us, and they are now part of it. Whether they watch it the second I publish it or in a year's time, it's imprinted and embedded into this very now moment. And that's what gets you excited, right? It's like, oh, wow, there is something greater. And it's just about learning the skills as anyone would and developing them, and they're yours. And, you look at Tom, and I think that's what we went into in this next one I'm publishing this week, is into the deeper esoteric sort of methods. And he was like, what people don't realize with Tom is he's channeling all the time. So he speaks on it as intuition, but he's literally tuning into anything at will, as I do. It's a mastered skill, but anyone can master it if they know how to. And that's why I always say, always find a method that develops your expansion, because you're always expanding and contracting. There's no exceptions. None. And so as long as you realize that when you feel like you're at your low, you're really at your high. And people are like, whoa. That would go back to your dear friend Bob Proctor. Is your glass half empty or full? How is it looking for you today? That's it. It's that now moment. And then we find the Wu Ji, the center point. That's the stillness. And as you referred to it, as we spoke of earlier, it's what we call Wu Wei within Taoism, which is effortless action, effortless effort. It's called the flow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A dear friend of mine, E from the White Dharma channel, would say, being done by the Tao. You're being done. You are it. You're now. And it doesn't come in any other form than that. And you're no longer a place, person, or thing. Your ego, your identity is you are the screen, you are the gong, you are the headset, you're all things. And that comes from that cultivational potential. When you obtain it, you know it, and you can dip into it at will. And, Tom would be the first one to say, yeah, you can heal people with your mind. Just focus on it. And he sort of waters it down. There's a method, and I know he has a method, as many people have methods. It's very important to refine that method so that it can be validated by you, or it just turns into conceptual stuff that you just hear a conversation on. You get excited, but you're like, I don't know how to do it. And it's like completely frustrating me.
Mhm. Wow, this is powerful information. Thank you so much for walking me through from your point of view, where I am, because I definitely, it's a process over the years of continuing to stay open, meditation, health, stay healthy, and then just keep learning. So it's a lifelong process for sure. Keep growing, learning, and then sharing on the podcast, because that's why I do it. It's not just put it out for others. It's that I'm learning too. I'm so hungry for information.
Right. And you will continue to validate it with yourself.
Mhm.
And it's never, I always tell people there's a million ways up the mountain. There's no right or wrong way up the mountain.
Right.
It's what actually is a repeatable, self-realized, validated experience, not someone else's story. And I always remind people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with, which, comes back to, within a Taoist model of understanding, is that now moment you are the truth teller. Your truth teller, your intuitive, will give you the answers to everything, but you must regulate it. It must be regulated. That understanding energetic potential, I always find a lot of people will come my way from across the globe because they're like, well, I'm an energy healer, I'm an attorney, I'm a judge, I'm a garbage collector, I'm a Reiki master, I'm an acupuncturist, I'm a Chinese medicine doctor, functional medicine doctor. But what happens in the end of the day, I always give people the quickest way to ascertain where you're at is, how do you feel at the end of the day? Well, I'm exhausted. Okay, let's start there.
Right.
Let's start there, because that's a self-realized identification that you're tapping into your life force. And Tom and I will have conversations that go on for hours, right? And through his own admission, he had the same thing. It's like he's a spring chicken. He's 80 years young, and like he'll get up on a podium and he'll stand there talking to people for 8 hours straight. And people are like, do you need a seat? Do you want to sit down? He goes, I feel amazing. And like when we have conversation, and it's understanding how to tap into that mother, as I speak of, the Tao, perfection. And it's like, don't tap into your own physical constitution, because that's where people get misdirected. And so you get a lot of healers or light workers or massage therapists. They're like, I want to heal the world. Oh, I'm exhausted, man. I had a long week. I had a long day. These people were so needy, blah, 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 blah. Because guess what? They're ciphering their own potential, because wherever your attention intention goes, the energy flows. So if you don't understand to tap into the mother, you're just giving away your very essence on a daily basis. And that chill you got right now was like yeah, I got you.
Yeah, Sam, because it's huge. It's huge. I'm definitely tapping in. I'm using my energy the wrong way for sure. And back in the late '90s, I was going to an event with Bob. He was picking up the neighbor and then picking me up, and we were going to an event. It was like 5 in the morning, and I'm an early riser in Arizona now. I get up at 3 and do the meditation and exercise before the day, get up early because it's hot too. But back then I remember I got in the car and Bob said, how are you, Andrea? And I said, Bob, I'm exhausted. It was like 5 in the morning in Toronto. I would never get up like that early. And he said, pardon? And I thought that the guy was losing his hearing. I'm like, oh no, Bob's like losing his hearing. So I lean forward. I'm like, hey, Bob, I'm exhausted. And I had no idea what big life lesson I was going to learn, because he turned around and he said, I heard you just fine, but you've got to learn how to control your energy because you shouldn't be exhausted. And exactly what you just said there. He's like, you're using the wrong energy here. And I remember thinking, what? I shouldn't have said anything at all. Like everything is a lesson with Bob. It was like you had to be really careful of what you said because it would turn into a big lecture at like 5 in the morning going to an event. And I'd never forgot it. And to that day, I never say I'm exhausted. But at the end of the day, how am I feeling? After getting up at 3, by 3 p.m., I'm destroyed. That's just how I feel. So I'm tapping into the wrong source
Well,
for sure.
you're tapping into your own.
Yeah,
So I always
totally.
explain to people they start their life in this world, and from a primordial sort of like seed of consciousness into physicality, into this material world, you have this physical form. And so everyone has their constitution. And I like to use a battery pack as an example. So the analogy is you have a battery pack. I've never seen anyone's potential coming in at 100%. They're normally coming around 80, 70, 80. Sometimes I've seen as low as 30 or 40. And the exciting part about that is, oh my goodness, well, that's my genetic disposition and my hereditary, like nasty, horrible, like ancestors. They're disgusting. They've given me nothing but garbage. No, what happens is you're born into it, and that's why Taoism alchemy is so exciting, because you can now level up. So your potential is at, let's say, 80%. And so when you discover how to cultivate the substance, you take the battery up to 100, you take it from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 9,000, and then you hover there. You're now a maestro of your 50 trillion cells, and you access the mother, and you're never, ever touching your own physical potential, your own constitution. And
Wow.
you will be very clear when you're doing that. I mean, I had one podcast, my longest podcast. Are you ready? 7.5 hours.
No. Oh my gosh. That's
And
crazy.
we were both sitting there having fun. Just,
Yeah.
we could keep
Yeah.
going.
I get it.
And so understanding that, and then you take every potential that you can isolate and then merge with everything. And so you start with the basic, within Taoism, there's like 9 levels of development: physical, body, energetic body, spiritual body, sun body, earth body, moon body. And then finally, the third degree of awareness is oneness body, ultimate body, and then being with all things. That's it. And so you level up these degrees of development, and all of a sudden, even in the first 3, by the time you get to spiritual body, you're already, you're leveling up to from a Hindu perspective, you're already hitting like, you know, you know, 50, 60 chakras, which is crazy. You get superhuman if you tune into 27 chakras. And I mean, within a Hindu system, I think it's like 14. Normally, Taoism, we go up to 108, where everything is coupled in the numerology of 9. It's that ascended level of that's the highest number, the most powerful number. It's really strange that when you look at conception to birth of a human life, it's 9 months. Like,
Yeah.
what a coincidence. Yet now, when we talk from a Taoist perspective, that's the development and the creation of the cosmos. And you develop those skills as you level up. And so all these sort of things come together. But the most important thing is you've already identified, I'm still, as the old expression would say, selling my soul. You're selling
Mhm.
essence of yourself, and it's
Right.
coming out by the end of the day. You and I have a very similar schedule. I get up at like 3 a.m., do all my practice. And, I don't normally leave my bed. I just leave my body. And so I
Mhm.
do that for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling good like I knew I would.
Mhm.
And it just gets greater and greater throughout the day. It will continue because you start to just you're absorbing and saturating things, and the body is saturated. It's what we call chi packing, that you never touch that potential. So all bets are off. And so, you start looking at other things to focus on that basic physicality, a little bit of movement, a little bit of nutrition, how you look at things from a yin and yang perspective, within Taoism, we have this thing called resting. Some people might call it fasting or intermittent fasting. Most efficient is a Taoist path is 1 meal every second day. And people are like, what is going on? Are you out of your mind? And then I get my students to start with something just as simple as a window of time for intermittent fasting. By the time, before you know it, they're doing 1 meal a day and they're getting into it. They're like, I've got more energy. I don't even know what to do with this energy. I don't even drink coffee anymore. I don't take stimulants. How is it that I have so much juice? Because now you're cultivating it. Now you've taken care of the distraction of the physicality by making it more efficient, and you're getting into the deep-seated alchemy where you're using all that crystalline power of the electromagnetic. And so, alchemy, that crystalline potential, that perfection we speak of, is merging platinum with gold with silver. And then you get into some crazy stuff. This is all, I've had many alchemists on that do more materialism stuff as opposed to energetic, which is two of the same. Yet they at first, when we have a conversation, they think it's different, but it's really the same. And you start to realize that all bets are off. There is zero reason why I am not, doing superhuman things to the average person on a daily basis, because you access that. But I think really what's important is that you can identify. The first thing is you're identifying what you know, and you're not telling yourself what you want to hear. You're telling yourself the truth, which is something that, Lao Tzu always likes to start with. Is like the first point of healing is being accountable, and that accountable is being conscious. And consciousness is a choice that is obtained through merging that unconscious process. You want to tap into all your potential. You want to be able to access that. And how do you do that with a brainwave state? If you're in gamma, you're accessing all brainwaves at once, at will. That means you can enter into and alter all type of mental, emotional, and physical trauma at will. That's how it should be. And that's how it is. But you must be able to obtain that, and that's through cultivating.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This is good. It's lifelong learning, really, to get, and it never ends. And when you were talking about your 7-hour podcast episode, I remember watching Proctor on stage. And, just like what you were saying, someone would say, do you want to rest? He would go from Thursday night, Friday all day, Saturday all day. And I just didn't understand it, because here I would consider myself fit, and he had way more energy than I could figure out. I'm like, he's doing something that I'm not, and I didn't know what it was until now. I get it.
Right. Yeah. It's like that epiphany moment going, whoa.
Yeah, lots of them. Yeah. How to sharpen the saw, I knew that I needed to talk to you. I knew that you had some information that I needed. So
I'm always here for you, my dear friend. And you wanted to go deeper into your seeking and find methods that work for you. I'll be more than happy to lead you on that path. And the potential, the result is like the old expression, the proof is in the pudding. It's self-evident. And you apply the mastery, you apply the methods, and you get the result. That's just how it is. It's like this whole I get a lot of people that are like, I spent 10 years training with my Sifu, and I got more out of listening to one of your podcasts than I did sitting in the lotus position for 10 years. And I'm like, hey, it happens. And you always remember this: nothing has gone to waste. Always return to the bellows. Always remember, contracting, expanding is happening. You're all and nothing at the same time. So never is it too late or too soon for you to acquire this awareness. And that means that you're getting what you need right now from my dear friend Tom. As he would say, the LCS is giving you what you need right now as you need it, and it's perfection. And it's like a lot of people tend to get caught up in the humanistic like limitations of that going, oh, why didn't I know this earlier? Oh man, it had took me this long to get here. No, there's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. There's no, oh, I should have known this 10 years ago, or why am I getting this now so late in the game? The game is perfection. You're entering it. And so it's never, oh my goodness, this is too soon or too late. And that's why I always remind people when we spoke on that basic understanding of mirror neurons. You can literally obtain everything, all the skills that I've ever developed in this instant moment, just from my resonance and your ability to tap into that.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like there is no limit. I always tell people, and I come across people that acquire that. They get it. And if they don't get it, they get it soon after that because it comes with a method. That's all. And a lot of people just get, they get disheartened because I've done, as you said, you're in the capital, Arizona, man. I mean, the capital of mysticism and paranormal and psychics and healers and, all that awesome stuff. It's like, it's exciting. Yet there's like 1,000 different versions of things. And then now you've got to go, okay, well, what do I want? Like you said, I could do a workshop on spoon bending, clearing chakras, healing this, doing that, healing whatever, channeling the Palladians, all this kind of stuff. There's so much. And that's where your barometer will start to point you in the right direction as you're listening. Like through your own admission, you're like, I've been writing down my dreams since the 90s. I've been logging this stuff. You have a very in tune, intuitive sense. It just needs to be repeatable. The fear that you're going to fail is the lie. You've already succeeded. You're already here. You're in the now. And you've developed this skill. All an interaction with myself or Tom or anyone else, it's just helping you remember who you are. This is a reminding of you, of your true potential, of who you really are, returning to you, returning to the center. And that's where people get into. I always tell people, oh yeah, I know Jifu, I want to move the energy and I want to shock people with energetic charges and I want to heal people. I want to do all this stuff. I want to levitate. I'm like, look, these are all exciting potential and you develop them. You will pursue it. You'll go after it. You'll achieve it. And then you'll be like, oh, is that it? Okay. Moving right along. But at the time, it was so beyond your fathoming realization that it was unobtainable. And then when you obtain it, it's not a lackluster, but it's more like, oh, I knew that. And now it's potential. And you you don't dismiss it, but you move on. And that's where I go, you will become, servitude will be your thing. And people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, listen, what happens is on a greater level, the micro of a macro is you're an expression of consciousness. That is the now moment. And so what happens is you're an ambassador to planet Earth. As Tom would say, we always remind people, when you obtain this thing, we call it love. And people are like, love, man, I don't know. And it can be subjective until further notice, right? Some people, when they're starting out on their cultivational path and they're seeking, it starts with love to me is razor blades and bunny rabbits. And to you, it's unicorns and fairies and rainbows. And so that's subject to your life experience. But as you resonate and you regulate the energy, you will fall into that universal knowing, and that will be the selflessness. And it's just like it's impossible to control this default setting of being selfless, and you will be in service always. And people go, well, what is that? Doesn't know. See, if I got to work on myself. I need to do. I'm like, understand this. When you're in service to others, you're in service to yourself.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, I got it. All right, I'll sign up for that. And that's where people go,
Well, that's what I saw with the podcast. A lot of people say, why did you start the podcast? And the byproduct of the podcast was what I get from interviewing people, the knowledge, the making connections over the years, of bringing in authors. Like you brought in Bruce Lipton, you brought in everybody to this conversation that matters to what we're saying. And I love doing that. That I think is, that's what I get from it. And then to be able to articulate those connections to help others and myself. So that's why I do it. It's the learning, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's remembering. It's you remember who you are. And people get all afraid. They, when they first get their first taste of a healing and they see it happen, and they're in the potential, and it's oscillating, and it's right now, and they're witnessing this thing, and it's a visceral thing from all angles. You're just embodying the whole thing, and oh my goodness, I witnessed a miracle. There is that moment of humanistic response where people stop and go, oh, I don't want anyone else to know how to do this. I'm the only coming of Jesus. And then that dissolves, right? They go, oh, because as I referred to that gift is your offering, the incantation that Jade Emperor likes to use is simple. A power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one is all, revealing perfection, manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. And when you hear that and you go, I feel that, I'm not just hearing it, I am feeling that through my body, you're there.
Yeah.
And that's the power of the now. That's the power of the energetic potential. That's the power of this ancient incantation you just experienced, but it reveals everything.
Beautiful, son, beautiful. Thank you so much for all of this. This has been a gift for me.
Well, you have been an incredibly amazing guest, and I love the conversation. And I would love to invite you back in the future, and we'll have more of this conversation, because everyone gets so much out of it. It's never ever just one point. Someone will hear something and they'll just run with it and go, wow, now that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so what I'm going to do is put all your social media under this podcast. I want people to come and find you. I want people to read your books. I want people to delve into your methods and practices. I want all my students, my disciples, my 126s, my subscribers. I want you to all go out and embody what is being offered potentially today. And Andrea has this incredible insight and experience it. Did you have anything you wanted to share with the audience before we close up here today?
Oh, just the main thing is that we're all at different points in the game of becoming who we are. And I remember in the spoon bending activity that I was in a room and I thought I was farther along. I'm doing the spoon bending thing. I've studied with Bob Proctor all these years. I felt like, that I was at this level and that my spoons would bend faster than anyone else's, because I'm so competitive. And it took me a while to bend my spoons. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to not compare myself to where others are in the journey of becoming who I am, and just continue to know where I am to keep going, but not compare myself to others. And we're all at different places, and to embrace that we are at different places, and keep studying people like San and people that he's interviewing and who they're talking about, and keep going and embrace that we're all learning at different paces.
Yeah, and there is never a right or wrong. I always remind people, if you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. There's never a right or wrong way up the mountain. For a Taoist, there's two sides of the mountain. One's yin, one's yang. You merge up the mountain, you merge as that one and become one with all things. That's just the very essence of it. That's the center point. That's the Wu way, the effortless action that we speak of. And when you hit that, you'll know you will know there's no in betweens. It's like, whoa, we're talking about, you want to talk about, you know, good luck or manifestation at an at will basis. That's, I mean, that's how it is. That's your true knowing. And then that creates the potential, as Tom would put it, the probability now is altered with your attention intention. You're now changing the game. So it's been a real pleasure, my dear friend. I'm so grateful that you came on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. This has been eye-opening for me. Thank you for all the gifts you gave me today.
That was it was amazing. I want to thank you for coming on the pod. Oh, one last question. What is your definition of consciousness?
Oh, I think that, and I started thinking about this because I did an episode on this, you know, going through our levels of consciousness. And I always want to find my research. So I found, you know, I gotta put it here. I found this National Geographic episode that you know, that talks about how we learn the secrets of our brain, seeing the latest breakthroughs, and it had a whole paragraph on what is consciousness. And so I created this graphic that talks about going from coma to drowsiness to sleep to fully aware. And I just think it's becoming aware of who we are, and it's a lifelong process. And make it simple, but I'm always looking to back it up with the science. What does National Geographic say? And it says that we still are trying to understand this thing called consciousness. And obviously I'm still trying to understand who I am, and grateful for people like San to keep learning.
That's amazing, my dear friend. I love that. And the hundreds of podcasts I've done, I've never heard the same answer. It's always perfect right now. And that's that part of the potential, is you're going to get what you need right here, right now. No matter what it is, it will be offered to you. You have that potential, as you said, awareness, and it's a choice, as Tom would say. You know, it's aware. You have choices. You know, being aware. It's just that simple. Thank you again, my dear friend. It's so great that we've created this new friendship. I look forward to speaking to you more in the future and having you back on the channel. And I'm always here if you ever need any sort of insight, or you want to go certain places. I will be more than happy to show you.
Thank you, San. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you in the next one, guys.